One characteristic that distinguishes the expert from the beginning teacher is the ability of the expert to relate and transform the content for the learner. To do this, the teacher needs a knowledge of the content and a knowledge of general methods or pedagogical skills, but the teacher also needs a knowledge of how to best teach particular content. This is called pedagogical content knowledge, or PCK, and this work emphasizes the critical role that content and knowing how to best teach content play in the teaching and learning and process. Developing the content involves progressions, or sequencing the movement tasks and learning experiences in a manner that has the potential to facilitate learning. Pedagogical content knowledge actually for physical educators means that that's the methods that we use in physical education to get across the content. They are specific for physical education. There are methods in music, art, dance, history, and math, all that are different than those used in physical education. There are some methods that are used across all subject areas, but in physical education we have some that are specifically used by physical educators that no other subject area would use. Good content development provides three things. First of all, it provides a progression or a sequence of learning experiences from simple to complex levels or beginning to advanced levels. It provides the foundation for what we teach in physical education. It also focuses the learner on achieving good performance, and we do that through teaching cues and refinements. It also provides opportunities to apply skills in game situations or in routines like in gymnastics and dance. As stated before, a progression is a series of extension tasks that gradually add complexity and difficulty. A progression is how skills are built and practiced by students in your class. Sometimes a progression is hard for beginning physical education teachers to grasp because they're so worried about teaching one specific task at a time. But it's how these tasks are built and chained together in a sequence that makes the learning meaningful for the students. Some examples of simple progressions are using no ball and then adding a ball to that in the same task, or using something or practicing a skill at a close distance and then practicing at a far distance. Ball directly to a receiver, or making the receiver move from one side to the other before they contact it. Of course, when the content is within the same skill and you're just adding conditions to it, it's called intra-task development. When you change the content between skills in a lesson, then it's inter-task development. There are four types of tasks in physical education. Three of them involve the teacher changing the task in the process. The first type of task is an informing task. It's the initial task in a sequence. It provides the foundation for the rest of the progression. The second type of task is when you extend a task, either extending it up to make it more challenging or extending it down to make it easier. And there's several different ways you'll learn in this chapter to do that. The third type of task is refining task. It's related to the quality of the movement. This is where the teaching cues come in and where the coaching comes in to teaching. The fourth type of task involves higher order thinking skills, and that's to apply or assess the task, moving from how to do it to how you use it or how you assess it. The initial task in a sequence depends on whether you're looking at a single lesson or a unit. It also depends on teacher preference. In volleyball, I might think that the first skill that we should learn about is the forearm pass. Some people think that it should be the spike to motivate students. So it just depends on the teacher and what they think is important and how they want to progress with the content as to what the informing task, the first initial task, ends up being. We will go into a greater discussion in the next podcast about extensions. But for now we want to talk about refinements. It's feedback to the students of a concern for quality and movement. Some examples of refining tasks are feedback to class or individuals, stopping student practice and focusing students on particular movement qualities, or when a teacher says work on landing as soft as you can, or make sure your weight is transferred to your front foot. Sometimes we talk about this as being effort in movement skills. With refinement, we are definitely looking for improvements in skill from one part of the lesson to the next. Applications usually mean that students are trying to figure out how to apply the skills, the effectiveness of the movement, to accomplish some purpose, which usually means that they're trying to use it in a game situation to accomplish a purpose. But in practice tasks, some examples would be see how many times you can field the ball in 1 minute, or keep dribbling without losing control of the ball, or rate yourself on the use of that cue. But that now gets into the assessment part of physical education. When a partner assesses the form of another partner or does some type of self-testing or assessment in application, and that is used throughout instruction whether you realize it or not. So an actual lesson might look like this. The informing task might be to volleyball set from one partner to another from a toss. That would be the informing task. And then to add to that, to extend that task, you might say that the tosser would toss it to one side or the other so that the receiver who's going to set it has to move to get to the ball. And then the refining task might be the cue of follow through toward the tosser. And then the application and assessment of that task might be after the tosser tosses you the ball and you set it toward the sideline, see how many times you can get the ball into a hula hoop taped on the floor. This is the end of podcast 1 for chapter 5. We're getting ready for podcast 2 in chapter 5, talking about extensions.